Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you to our witnesses for appearing today. Mr. Chairman, in February of 2013, 1 month into the 113th Congress, the ranking member of this committee wrote to you and to Chairman Hastings to request an oversight hearing on the wildlife poaching crisis in Africa. Unfortunately, that request was not fulfilled, and since then, more than 35,000 elephants and 1,000 rhinoceros have been killed illegally for their tusks and their horns. Elephant ivory and rhino horn is bought, it's smuggled, and it's distributed by organized criminal enterprises, the same people who deal in heroin, assault weapons, and forced child labor. These crime syndicates are supplied with ivory by a new breed of formidable poacher who is equipped with night vision goggles, automatic weapons, and sometimes even helicopters. In some cases, these poachers are simply out to make a few quick dollars, but in other instances, more sinister forces are at work. The Lord's Resistance Army in Central Africa and Darfur's Janjaweed are financing their violent insurgencies, in part with ivory profits. An al-Shabaab and an al-Qaeda-affiliated terrorist group that killed 67 persons last year in Nairobi and 48 people in another attack just last week in Kenya derived 40% of its revenue from wildlife trade. Given these troubling facts, I was concerned to see that the purpose of this hearing appears to be to question one particular component of the Obama administration strategy to deal with the poaching crisis. That is, a proposal to tighten the ban on the import, export, and sale of elephant ivory in order to prevent nefarious actors from using loopholes in the current system. While some legitimate concerns have been raised over the ability to sell and transport musical instruments and antiques containing ivory, one fact is inescapable. The United States is the second largest market for ivory, much of which is sold here illegally. Earlier this month, a Philadelphia art dealer was sentenced to 2.5 years in prison and ordered to pay a $150,000 fine for smuggling recently poached ivory and pawning it off as antique. This illicit activity has been going on for 9 years and was not an isolated incident. The judge in the case correctly noted that poaching funds criminal gangs operating in Africa. While I know that the Fish and Wildlife Service has been and will continue working with stakeholders to allow limited trade in items containing ivory, we must be cautious. It is too easy under current rules to disguise recently poached ivory as antique, which in turn promotes the slaughter of more elephants. I believe it is not too much to ask legitimate ivory dealers to take a few additional steps to verify that their products are bona fide antiques. We do want to be sure that this verification is thorough, though. But the bottom line is that there is an international poaching epidemic that is devastating African wildlife, threatening the lives of wildlife rangers, and creating international security risks that most of us in the United States cannot even begin to understand. I would like to address the temporary ban on importing sport-hunted elephant trophies from Tanzania and Zimbabwe. Based on population data and documented cases of the illegal killing of elephants, it is clear that both of these countries have been deeply afflicted by the escalating poaching epidemic. While nations that have populations of elephants are ultimately responsible themselves for their own management, the United States cannot legally allow the importation of elephant trophies in the absence of clear evidence that the hunting contributes to the survival of the species. Given the scale of the current poaching crises and the uncertainty of what happens to the money that hunters pay host countries, additional killing of elephants in Tanzania and Zimbabwe is only adding to the body count. I applaud President Obama and his administration for taking decisive steps to combat wildlife trafficking, and I look forward to hearing from our witnesses today about how they can protect endangered African elephants and rhinos and stem the tide of poaching that is reaching now a crisis level. Thank you, and I yield back.